This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
Imagine discovering that your face and voice have been hijacked, manipulated into a deepfake, and broadcast across the internet. It's a chilling violation of privacy, and it proves a terrifying point. No one is immune to online harms. And as digital abuse, cyberbullying, and image-based violence become increasingly normalised, the rules of engagement are also shifting, like the Online Safety Commission or OSC that Singapore is officially rolling out in June 2026. This new regulatory watchdog is designed to force tech giants to take down harmful content and give victims some respite from the harassment and bullying. But will this new law actually have the teeth to protect us? Or will trolls quickly invent new ways to circumvent the laws? To unpack the realities of digital abuse and the new legal landscape is a lawyer who founded a non-profit organisation that helps victims with counselling and legal advice. In a twist of events, she herself became a deepfake victim recently. Hello, I'm Linda Hong, Assistant Podcast Editor at the Straits Times. And you're listening to In Your Opinion, and I'm joined by Stephanie Yuan Teo, Joint Managing Partner at TSMP Law Corporation. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hi, Linda. Very good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, first up, let's talk about this SG Her Empowerment or She. Why do you start this SG Her Empowerment?
We call it SHE now.
SHE now?
Yes.
Okay.
We call it SHE. In 2022, the Senior Minister of State, Sim Ann, called me and she said, we're starting up an Alliance for Action on online harms. Would I be part of that? So I'm like, sure. And we were still I think it was 2021. We were still in the throes of COVID and we attended a bunch of Zoom calls. So I thought that was it. But after that was done, everybody thought that it might make sense to have an agency that supports victims of online harms because the threat and the pain goes much deeper than you would think if you haven't actually experienced it yourself. Many more people than we realize were experiencing online harms. And everybody felt that it was necessary to have an agency that would help support that. And so with much encouragement, we set up SHE. And one of the first things that we did was set up the She Care Centre, where we provide support for victims. We like to call them survivors of online harms.
So how much did your own experience, because you were a victim or a survivor of a deepfake recently, so how much did this experience actually push you to actually set this up?
This experience was relatively new. At the time that we were talking about this, deepfake technology had not hit the general public yet. And it was just doxing, it was cyberbullying that we were talking about. There was some revenge porn sharing. But things have really escalated in the last few years. So that's just become much worse. My deepfake experience happened between the first reading and the second reading of the Online Safety, Relief and Accountability Bill. So this was very much top of mind for me, and I was on the steering committee for that bill, never having experienced any online harms. Linda, to give you some context and to give your listeners some context, I'm a 56-year-old woman. When you think about deepfake porn, you don't think about somebody who's got her CPF already. And yet it happened to me. Somebody took photos of me from my company website, as well as from some magazines that I'd been previously featured in. And they turned those photos, these were stills and mostly headshots. They turned those photos into videos of a woman with incredibly thin and long legs, clearly not mine, who was in slightly suggestive poses, a la Basic Instinct. I don't know if you remember the movie by Sharon Stone where she crosses her legs. And then there was another woman in the picture pulling me up, apparently, and it was all a bit suggestive. So it wasn't pornographic, but it was very suggestive. And my son checked it out on TikTok. He counted 11 videos or photos that were shared, which is pretty incredible. I didn't know who had done it. I didn't think that I had any enemies out there. And my big suspicion is that this was not done by somebody targeting me particularly. I suspect nowadays there's lots of bots who just create these things for fun, maybe to get more eyeballs, maybe to get more traffic. I also found that another woman friend of mine, slightly younger than me, who's in the financial industry, also had some photos and videos of her doctored. She also doesn't share anything. She's got 2 young daughters. So for her, it was a very real, much more painful experience because she's thinking about how her young daughters who are in their teens are going to grow up in this world and what would happen to them if this happened. So it was quite a reality check for us.
Maybe we could talk a little bit more about what went through your head or how do you feel when you had this?
So I've been dealing with online harms, and SHE had been running for 3 years when this happened. So it's a reality that's available to me. I'm aware of what victims go through, survivors go through by way of the stories I hear from our counsellors. It's not new to me. But when it hits you and it happens to you, it's a different experience. You go through what you don't expect as a mature adult woman in a stable relationship to go through. You doubt yourself. The first thing you think is, did I do this? Am I just out in the public eye too much? Now, to be clear, I don't share sexy photos of myself on the internet. I have a Facebook account that's very highly private. I'm on LinkedIn, but really I only share on current affairs and legal issues there. There are no suggestive photographs there. So I don't think I'm even in a high-risk bracket of this happening to me. And yet it did. So I already asked myself, is this something that I brought on myself? And of course, as soon as the thought comes, you tell yourself, don't be silly. But a lot of my friends who work with me, who are on my board or who are around me said, Steph, are you okay? And secondly, they said, you didn't do this to yourself. Don't blame yourself, because they know that that's where your mind carries you. Okay? Then comes the sense of embarrassment. I'm a bit embarrassed about this. First, you're embarrassed that it's happening. 2, you're embarrassed that, people will think, who does this woman think she is? And it's destabilizing. Of course, you talk yourself out of it. It doesn't take me a few minutes, but it all happened. So it probably happened to me in a very, very much smaller way than somebody who, for example, has shared more suggestive photos with her friends and then somebody takes it and goes too far with it. I can't imagine what those girls in sports school felt when their classmates did this to them out of maybe pranking fun. I can't imagine what it would be to go through that because I can't imagine what comments there may have been from other people. In my case, it was taken down pretty quickly. We did what you're supposed to do. I made an in-app report of all the pictures. I got my friends to make an in-app report against those pictures as well so that, with more volume, this would get escalated. And then through SHE, the She Care Center, we did a physical report to the app. And that's necessary because SHE is a trusted flagger. We are trained by the different platforms as to how best to report these issues. So when you make an in-app report, what's interesting is that that's dealt with by algorithms and by the bots because they get billions of in-app reports every month, right? So a computer has to go through that. But when you do a trusted flagger report, a physical individual will actually go through that. So it gets taken down much faster if they feel that it breaches community standards.
I see.
Yeah, so that's really important. This is a 2-step process, which I think a lot of members of the public are not aware of. So that's necessary. We had it taken down within 5 days. Also important to do a Google reverse search just to make sure that you can't still find it via the normal search engines. And then we did the reports of those as well. So it is kind of important. And that's where She Cares is useful because it can guide the survivor through that whole journey. Otherwise, you put an in-app report, then you think, it's done, but it doesn't get taken down. There is a feeling of powerlessness. The survivors who work with us talk about this feeling of lack of agency. I don't know who did it, or I know who did it, but I can't prove it. And there is that sense of what can I do next? And is the solution only to go to a lawyer? And can they even do anything? And how long will it take? Can I go to the courts? Is that what it takes? Young people may feel, I don't want my parents to find out. It's so embarrassing. I want it taken down as quickly as possible. That's the overriding, that's the most important response from everybody. We want it taken down as quickly as possible. All things being equal, speed is the most important. So my experience helped me to go through that. It gave me a better sense of understanding of what survivors go through.
So this in-app means I assume it's inappropriate pictures.
Yes, or you can say it's a fake picture or a fake video of me. There are several hits. So you go to the picture and then you hit the three dots, and then every app will have a slightly different menu of things that you can report. But in my case, it was that this was not a this was not a true reflection of who I was. It was an impersonation.
So would the OSC have actually helped in your case then?
In my case, it will only help when the OSC rolls out its next round of harms. In the most immediate round of harms that they are rolling out for, there is doxing, cyberbullying, image-based sexual abuse. So those are the most critical ones, because I think those you can see that they're the most critical and harmful. Well, I don't want to rank harms, but you can sort of see that those would be very immediately stressful. In the next round, they have other things like impersonation and deepfakes that will come up next.
If it's actually helped in your case, why do we still need this OSC?
5 days is not a very short period. Okay, it's 5 days. If you're going through stress and if you're, let's say, a young person and you care what your friends are talking about you and saying about you, it can be, every moment is very stressful. So if we can reduce that time, that would be great. Secondly, it only works if the platform finds that it has reached their community standards. Every platform may have slightly different community standards. They're not bound by a set of laws in that sense. And so having the OSC be able to direct a takedown if it hasn't been done within your in-app reporting process, that will be helpful, especially when the platform and you may not agree that the standards have been breached. So I think that that's critical. Having the OSC and OSRA, the Act, does more than just provide recourse. Recourse, really, we're chasing our own tails. By then, much of the harm is done. You're just trying to reduce harm. It's harm mitigation rather than anything else. I think what the Act does is it establishes what is appropriate behavior. It signals what is right and where the line is crossed. And I think that's really important. It sets a standard for community behaviors. It also creates new laws where you can actually go after the perpetrator if you know who they are. Currently, the laws are not that clear about that. This actually sets up that you have a cause of action against that person if you know that that person has harmed you. And that, again, sets signals and it gives recourse and it gives agency back to the survivor. You know, Linda, before I started working on online harms, etc., I know that there is a town square, and the town square has edges and boundaries, okay? You can stand up and speak in the town square, but if you said something offensive, if you said something that's against the law, people will either tell you shut up or you could get into trouble. Now, the internet has taken away the edges of that town square. It used to be if you don't want to hear somebody shouting at you, you could go back to the privacy of your own room in your own home, surrounded by your loved ones. Now the town square and those voices are carried in your device, which means that you're not safe from that sense anywhere in the world, that sense of judgment, that sense of shame, that sense of wanting to run away, the sense of being targeted. You're not safe from it anywhere in your world unless you shut off your device. And a lot of young people don't want to do that. Or a lot of older people don't want to do that because their device does more than just scroll the internet for them. The internet, Linda, didn't invent misogyny. It didn't give birth to inequality. But what it has done is, because of the anonymity, the speed, and the scale of the internet, it has weaponized these harms. And that's the problem I think we're dealing with. And because of that, we really do need a whole of society effort to look at this. The law really is playing catch up with the harm. If the law, however, signals what is appropriate behavior, if the community decides that this is what we collectively think is the right thing for a potential perpetrator, a potential victim, or even a bystander to do, then that's what's going to make the difference.
Will trolls actually be deterred with this new law, or will we just see them, going into darker private chat groups?
I think you will always see trolls. Right? There will always be bad actors. You can have a law against murder and the punishment can be a death sentence and there will still be people who commit murder. But I think what changes is what is acceptable behavior for people. Say the young boys who are at sports school. If they know what is acceptable and not acceptable, that makes a difference. If people start to know what cyberbullying and cyber harassment look and sound like, and they know that that's where the line should not be crossed, then hopefully they will change their minds about that. I think a lot of the problem right now is the internet is relatively new at this level of engagement, certainly at this level of technological ability. And therefore, the man on the street, the average person, may not know what is acceptable behavior for the internet.
Since we're talking about the average person don't know what is acceptable, maybe we can go to talk about this Singaporeans throwing terms like doxing, POFMA, hey, don't dox her, hey, I'll POFMA you, be careful of PDPA. You mentioned that they don't know, right? So I assume to you or your judgment is that Singaporeans are actually not that media literate. Will they actually fear this new OSC that people will just retreat from the internet altogether?
I think the internet is here to stay. I think if people retreated from the internet a little bit, it might not be a bad thing, but I don't think that that's the impact that this will have. It's a very different thing from POFMA. So if you look at the laws that the government has put in place, and using a bit of my lawyering hat here, there are some laws like the Broadcast Act which affect the large format platforms. Okay, that sets the right standards for the platforms, the technology companies. Then POFMA is really when there is false information that's given. It's not a censorship tool. It's really there to make sure that the corrected information runs alongside it, right? You in the media would be familiar with that as concept as well. What's really important and groundbreaking about OSRA and the OSC is it is a self-help remedy given to the victims and the survivors. That's the difference. It is not initiated by government. It is a very quick tool and agency for quick assistance to take down offending posts. And that's the basic thing. And who initiates this? It'll be the victims and their families. So that's huge. It gives the victims back that sense of agency. And as a survivor of online harms myself, I understand how important that is. The first thing I did was call my friends. What do I do next? Okay, you've done this before. What should we be doing next? How many times should we report? Should I ask my son to report as well? When he sees these pictures, what should we do? I think that's really important. To be able to have an agency to go to who will then say, hey, we think this is wrong, we'll give you this order or whatever it is, I think that's going to be huge.
So just now you said the average person don't know what is acceptable. What's the deeper social issue here do you see that's happening in Singapore and maybe worldwide?
It's almost like if you are playing a virtual game online, the behavior that you adopt there is different from the way you behave in person. You would never pick up an axe and hit somebody on the head with it or slash them. But online, the world is different. And social media sits somewhere between those two things, isn't it? And you have anonymity. You have an avatar that is your handle on Instagram or whatever. And now you have to decide what is the right way to behave. And the internet in its current form hasn't been around for long enough for people to have hit that sense of what is appropriate. And it's mostly young people who are engaging in a lot of this stuff. They're not going to go to their parents and have their parents tell them what's the right thing to do. And their parents will be on Facebook, whereas these young people are on Roblox, they're on all sorts of other different mediums which their parents are not involved in. There is going to be this sense of there's nobody teaching them what is the right thing to do and what is appropriate and asking them to think for themselves. And then there's all these fun, cheaply or freely available internet tools that you can use. You can make a meme of your dog. Why not make a meme of this girl that you kind of like, right? So the newness of it, the speed of its delivery to us, the speed of technological change, I think that's all adding to the equation. And there just hasn't been enough time for everybody to come up with what is appropriate behavior and what are appropriate standards. And that's why I think you do need some signaling as to what is appropriate. Is the government action enough? No, because no government action is ever going to be enough to fix a community, a sense of what the community thinks is right. But does it kickstart the conversation? Does it set some boundaries, some hard boundaries? Absolutely. And I think that's necessary.
And let's talk about the survivors. She was established in September 2022. Are there more or less survivors, seeking help since then?
Yes, we've had it go up 2.4 times. And in the first year, nobody really knew who we were. We weren't on a lot of the published helplines, etc. But as we've gotten more traction, the numbers have gone up a great deal. In fact, we're a little bit worried what it's going to mean when the OSC comes into operation and there may be more people being aware that they've been online harm targets and therefore they may need more support. So we're looking at how best to deal with that and to manage that. We want to make sure that we have enough resources to help everybody who needs help. And some of these people who need help, it goes on for a long time. I heard a terrible story recently about a young woman who thought she'd fallen in love with somebody. Then she sent some photographs. I mean, you're nodding now, Linda. Obviously, you've heard some version of this story many, many times. And then she sent some photographs upon his request. And this person on the other side of her romantic liaison, which may just be a bot or some guy sitting in a scam farm someplace, is now blackmailing her. And she has paid up hundreds of thousands of dollars, which she's had to beg and borrow. And I don't know how long it's gonna take before it ends.
So this person actually has sort of deepfaked her.
I don't think it's deepfake. I mean, she may have sent photos because she thought this was somebody that she was in love with. And sending dirty photos of yourself is not that unusual amongst young people.
Right.
So it's quite terrible. I've heard stories also, and I don't know how widespread this is, but somebody said, if I want extra pocket money, if I take a photograph of myself in a suggestive or revealing photo of myself, so long as I look underage in that photo, I can get $50 for that. So there may be young kids out there who are making extra money by doing this. But your face must be in the photo because the buyers want to know that this is an underage kid. I mean, how appalling is that? I don't know what to say.
And not many people would actually know this sort of thing that's happening. I guess,
you
how
and I are not
consequences,
15 years old, so we don't know what it would be like to be a 15-year-old wanting a bit of extra pocket money so you can take your girlfriend to the movies. I don't know what. It's been a long time. It's been 41 years since I was that age, so the world has changed a little bit.
But sometimes the society's first reaction is just saying you shouldn't take it. And in the eyes of the law, specifically this sort of new law, if a young girl were to give her intimate picture, does that actually disqualify her from, getting help and being protected as a victim and subsequently a survivor?
No, because if she sent it to somebody thinking that person was going to keep it private and that person goes and shares it, then you can go after the platforms and get them to take it down. If it's in a chat group, you can go after the administrator. There is recourse, so the OSC will be very useful in those circumstances. That's if you know who the guy is lah. Of course, if it is some scammer sitting in a scam farm in some Southeast Asian country, you may not be able to get to that person. But you can get the platforms to take it down, so you then have to figure out which platforms it's on lah. It's not so easy.
And one more question I have is, Europe has this law on the right to be forgotten. Say, for instance, if it goes up, sometimes youngsters don't know where the line and the boundaries. Do you think that Singapore should actually have this right to be forgotten?
I think the global community, especially the law enforcement and objective right-setting communities, should get together and agree on what is acceptable and unacceptable. And if there is a way to make my image protected by me, that's really worth looking at, because then if I can ask for it to be taken down, and I'm sure technology will be sufficiently sophisticated that it will be able to find images of me, I don't think that would be a bad thing, because technology is going to develop in a way where bad actors will be able to use a random photograph of you taken at an event someplace where you're small in the corner of the picture and turn that into a deepfake photo and then maybe use that to blackmail you. I mean, that day is not far off, And like a good scammer, you don't say, pay me $1 million or I'll take this or I'll send this out. They'll just say, give me $100. And everybody can afford $100, right? So I suspect that that's where this goes next, right? You commercialize the harm and monetize it. And that would be horrible. So yes, I don't know whether it should be this version of the law or something, but there should be standards that everybody agrees on. Right now, even the platforms tell me the difficulty is every country has slightly different laws and regulations, and so it's hard for them to really align. The internet is a multi-jurisdictional global force. I think we need to meet it with a multi-jurisdictional global force of our own, setting standards and stating what is acceptable and not acceptable.
That's going to take a while, right?
It's going to take a darn long time, yes.
It seems like when we talk about someone sending nude pictures of themselves for $50, it seems like it's normalizing this devaluation or devaluing your body. Is this something that, we should actually be looking at as a social issue that, we are actually normalizing intimate picture sex
100% yes. 100%, 1,000% yes. Completely agree with you, Linda. The survivors that we work with, 1, they blame themselves. 2, they self-censor. Now, the internet is meant to be a force for good. It can be a force for good. It's great for democratizing education, information, right? It can empower poorer countries, for example. But if it's not used for good, it can do so much harm, as we've already discussed. And I think that needs to change. Very often, the survivors will tell us that people around them will say, you brought this on yourself. They will also say, who asked you to put this picture up there? Or is normal what? If you put this picture, or if you even put a photograph of yourself which looks pretty innocuous, not a sexy photo, then whatever people say about you is, you deserve it lah, is what has been said to them. It normalizes the harm and it makes it almost okay for everybody to then just pile on and say, Linda, your hair looks horrible here, why you put on so much weight, stuff like that will happen. And that needs to change clearly. Me putting a photograph of myself on holiday is not me inviting everybody to pile on and tell me how much weight I put on. Thank you, menopause.
I've not encountered this on the internet as much about people making comments, but I guess that's in a way, it's the doxing bit about making comments and giving you mental stress about that.
Yeah, it's a kind of cyberbullying. And what I hear about happening in some schools is that the Sec 4 kids will set up a WhatsApp chat group to make fun of the Sec 1 kids who've just joined the school. And they will say terrible things. This person, the mother's so ugly, did you see? Or this person's so ugly, but of course you can understand lah. Do you see the parents come drop them off? They're also very ugly. Really terrible things. If you're a Sec 1 kid, 13 years old, joining a new school after the horrific experience that PSLE is for most people, do you really need that from your seniors? But if this is now programmed into how they generally behave, isn't that awful? If this was your younger sister going through that, wouldn't you want the opportunity to call them out? I would.
I would.
Yeah. And so we must have a system where we can call people out, where bystanders are taught, no, this is not acceptable. No, let's not do that. Okay, I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter. If I see stuff like this happening, I just charge in and say, look, that's unacceptable. Let me explain to you why. Sit down, young man. But I'm just that kind of person. A lot of Singaporeans don't do that because they think, don't make trouble for yourself. Today we fix doxing. Firstly, there's anonymity. Until we fix the anonymity problem, the VPN problem, we're never going to fix that. And then there will be other types of harms. And even now, as we go after platforms, traditional platforms like Meta, like TikTok, there will be new platforms coming up. Young people have told me, it doesn't matter what you control on Meta or Facebook, because we're not on Facebook. We're on Roblox. We're in the chat rooms of our various games. And so they meet people in their various games. Sometimes they get groomed by predators on those game chat rooms. Even though those apps are for younger children, there'll be people who go in there and try to pretend to be a young person and make friends. And that's how they get groomed and preyed upon. There'll always be something else. It needs... Not that any of this is enough, but first society needs to come together and say, enough is enough, this is what we think is right, and this is what we're going to police. Secondly, governments need to come together and say, this is how we're going to do things. There needs to be safety by design. We need to mandate that, whatever that may mean. We need to force platforms and all these providers where people can meet third-party strangers. We need to have age assurance, for example. With AI being as fantastic as it is right now, don't tell me you can't take a photo of me and figure out my age roughly, right? So we should be able to do that. Age assurance, and make sure that you don't have, and that it's not another AI bot that's trying to get onto the site and pretend to be somebody young. I mean, technology must be able to fix some of these things so that at least you can make sure, you can't make sure that there's no bullies in the playground, but if you make sure that everybody in the playground is of the right age, at least you are throwing out some actual predators lah. There'll still be bullies, there'll still be mean kids on the playground. We need to teach those mean kids what's the appropriate way to behave, but certainly you should lock the door of the playground to predators, to pedophiles, to people wanting to do bad things, bad actors. That's what I think happens next.
How do you think we can bring up children in this internet age? I mean, we've spoken about your son, who's actually an adult now, but looking at some of the children that are growing up, how do you think we can actually raise children to be resilient?
I think not having them on social media up until a certain age is probably not the wisest, because like Australia has banned social media for those under 16. Okay, Indonesia is making the same sort of moves. But it's not like at 16 you will suddenly be wise to the ways of the world. Okay, I think what we need to do is have children learn to use the internet wisely and maybe not have that taught by the school discipline master, because that's the last person. That and the principal and your parents are the 4 top people that you're not going to listen to when it comes to something like this. So I think we need to have better campaigns and better awareness raising for all the kids so that they know what is safe behavior and what is appropriate behavior. I think that that's very important. I think it's not just about the perpetrator and the victim. I think it's also everybody in their social circles. So that if you say something that's a bit out of place, somebody says to you, hey, that was a bit mean. Which is what happens in real life, right? If I said something a bit mean to you, somebody might pull me aside and say, hey, Steph, did you really mean to say that? Because Linda's face looked really upset for a little while. Or I know she's been battling this for some time and that might really hurt her. Then I'll go up and apologize to you. But there will be somebody calling out my behavior, hopefully in a respectful and sensitive way. And that will teach me to do what is right. But if everybody just says, never mind, Steph can say, I also can say, nobody knows who I am anyway because we're all hiding behind our avatars and our handles, that's when it really gets ugly and violent. And things are much more violent and much more ugly and harassing when you can hide behind the veil of anonymity. And that's something that we need to fix.
Okay. Interesting conversation.
I've had fun today.
Well, that's a wrap for In Your Opinion. I'm Linda Hong. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for your insights.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was fun. Take care. Stay safe online, okay?
You can email us your thoughts on this issue. Also, if you'd like to read ST articles or opinion columns, these links can be found in our podcast show notes. This episode is edited by Teo Tong Kai. Thanks for listening.
Send your feedback to podcast@sph.com.sg. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or within our Straits Times app. Thanks for listening.